So, how many remember back in January 25 of 2012? Well, an incident happened on that day you probably will remember. Barack Obama spoke in Iowa. It was a coup, as you well can understand, in January. He spoke in Iowa, and then he flew down to sunny Arizona to Phoenix. As he got off the airplane, he was met on the tarmac by Jan Brewer, who was the governor of Arizona. She had a short conversation with him, and then the iconic picture of her standing in front of Obama, shaking her finger in his face and saying, "Do your job." Remember that? Do your job. He was quite taken back by that. Nobody shakes their finger in the face of the president. Well, she did. We all have a job to do, and he wasn't doing his job. She said that we got all these illegal aliens coming to our country, and you're not doing anything about it. Do your job. And he wasn't doing his job. For the most part, we think of a job as something we do to earn a paycheck. I got my first job when I was 14 years old delivering newspapers in Detroit, Michigan. And we were in St. Clair Shores, a suburb of Detroit. And I would get my newspapers, I'll roll them up, as only a newspaper boy knows how to do. They didn't go with the plastic sleeves, they rolled up, went inside each other, and I would ride my bicycle down the street and toss out newspapers on people's front lawn. In the wintertime, when there's snow on the ground, I'll put my newspapers in a wagon, and I'll pull my wagon down the street delivering newspapers. And I did that from 14 to about 16. Then my folks moved to Arizona, and in Arizona, I delivered the Tucson Daily Citizen newspaper all through high school. Of course, there are other kind of jobs, and anytime you take on a responsibility for something, you're performing a job. It may be chores around the house, maybe some work you're doing at a charity. It might be something as simple as walking your dog, but it's still a job. Something you have volunteered to do, and your job is to do it. Sometimes we meet people who think their job is telling you how to do your job. Those people are really, really irritating. And eventually they're going to be told, mind your own business, do your own job. Sometimes we might enjoy our job, and sometimes we may hate our job. But in all cases, when you take on the responsibility of performing a job, you are volunteering to become a servant or a slave to that job for that period of time. Sometimes the job might be pleasant, perhaps even fun. Other times the job might be dirty and unpleasant. But whatever the job, for the most part, we feel a degree of pride and satisfaction in knowing we did a good job. Most people like the satisfaction knowing they did a good job. And whether we want to admit it or not, we like it when others notice that we did a good job. Even Jesus Christ understands that. That's why he says to those faithful servants, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." Good job. When I built a flower box in front of our home, in our yard, Muriel said I did a good job. Now, maybe she was lying, I don't know, but I still like to hear good job. And when Muriel prepares a meal, I like to tell her she did a good job. Thank you. And so we all need to we all need to recognize the good job that other people, services they do for us. I recall a comic strip a few years ago of a woman in the kitchen washing dishes, and she hollers out to her husband. She says, "Do you love me?" And he hollers back, "Of course I love you. I'm your husband. That's my job." So, it may not seem very romantic, but the fact is that it is my job to be a good husband. And if you're married, it's your job to be a good husband. And it's your job, my wife's job is to be a good wife. And if you're a woman, it's your job to be a good wife. If you don't have parents, if you're not married, then it's your job to be good children to your parents. The Bible tells us that we're supposed to raise children to nurture and admonition of the Lord. It tells us in Ephesians. We all have all kinds of jobs in our life. And we're told in Hebrews our job is like a race. As Christians, we have a job to win the race that God has given us. Now, we don't often think of our life as a race, but it is. Hebrews 12:1. It says in Hebrews 12:1, wherefore, seeing we also are compassed with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which easily besets us. Let us run to patience the race that's set before us. Now, there could probably be a lot of sermons just on that one line, lay aside the sin which doth easily beset us, because a lot of times we have things that get us off focus of our job. Employers don't like it when their employees get off focus. Sometimes it can be even dangerous to get off focus of their job. So we're being told by the writer of Hebrew, whoever that was, nobody knows for sure. Some people say it was Paul, other people say it was Priscilla. And we're told to keep focused on our job. We're told there are things that slow us down, to keep us off from winning our race. That is true for any race we're in, because there are all kinds of races. There's a foot race, there's car races, there are horse and dog races. Maybe you might be in a race to be the first one in the buffet line, but it's still a race. There are races at sporting events, and there's races all. Well, I recall when I was in 6th grade, I was in a sporting event, and I thought I could win. I did come in second place, I want to point out. But there's a story behind that. So I entered this race in the broad jump. That's where you run and you leap, you see how far you can jump. And I thought I could maybe win. And so the guy in front of me, he did his run, and he leaped, went flying through the air, and he landed, and I gave it on my all, and I leaped, went through the air, and I landed. And I came in second place because we're the only two that competed. there was nobody else. I got the red ribbon. I never really was proud of it because I just lost. If there had been a third person, I probably would have been third place. So, but it was a race. In 1977, Burt Reynolds, Jerry Reed, and Sally Fields made a movie they started called Smokey and the Bandit. And they were in a race. They had 500 pounds of illegal Coors beer. They had to transport from Texarkana to Atlanta, Georgia. They had to do it within 28 hours. And so it was a race against time. And there's a song, Eastbound and Down, loaded up and trucked. Remember that song? We're going to do what they say can't be done. We have a long way to go and a short time to get there. I'm eastbound and watch old bandit run. They're in a race for time. There are 4 things that I've noted that prevent you from winning a race. 4 things. You have to know where the finish line is. If you're going to run a race, you got to know where your finish line is at. You not just can't just run. You got to know where your destination is. You have to know what threatens your success. If there's something going to threaten your success of winning. You have to know your weakness and how to overcome them. And you have to have a will to win. If you don't have that last one, if you don't have a will to win, you're probably not going to win the race. The will to win, the will to live, is the reason that sometimes many times people recover from a sickness or severe injury. They just had the will to live. When I hear the word will, I think of 2 people. I think of the 1934 documentary masterpiece by Lenny Riefenstahl called Triumph of the Will. I think that's a movie. And then I also think of G. Gordon Liddy's book titled Will. And G. Gordon Liddy was the mastermind of the Watergate break-in, and he's the only one that would not cooperate with the government. He didn't cooperate with the government. He said, "My father didn't raise any snitches," and he believed that the Democratic Party was full of communists, and that what he did was justified. And later on, never recanted, never shown any remorse. He said, "I would do Watergate again, but with a better crew." I've always kind of admired G. Gordon Liddy. But nevertheless, the will is so important. So the author of Hebrews said we are in a race, and we must be careful not to let troubles and sin get in our way. That's the hard part. Things get in our way. Unknowing to us, they come from directions we're not even prepared. They're just suddenly there. And we have to make sure that we're prepared to make the right decision. We talked about that a few weeks ago, making the right decision. It's not always easy. And sometimes we make a decision, we think it's the right decision, but it's not the right decision. Like I pointed out, if you ask me to repair your car, that's not a sin, but it'll be a bad decision. So anyway, we have to make the right decisions. We have to be prepared to win our race. So as Christians, we are in a race. Now I'm going to talk about the first two things this week, which is you have to know what your finish line is, and you also have to know what threatens your success. And next week we'll talk about the other two. So you have to know what the finish line is. When people start learning t-ball, or maybe volleyball, it's interesting watching a little child playing soccer, and they run in the wrong direction. They're kicking the ball in the wrong direction. So they need to learn where the finish line is. And t-ball, they need to know where first base is. They don't need to know where second base is. They don't need to know where third base is. But they need to know where first base is. You tell little Johnny, that's where you run. If they learn nothing else, that's where you run. You have to know where what their finish line is. Now, in the church, people are told our goal, our job is to get to heaven. They say, you got to prepare yourself to get to heaven. I'm not saying they're wrong, but that's not right. They are wrong. They are wrong. That's not your goal, to get to heaven. That's your reward, but that's not your job. Heaven is the reward, not the job. Let me give you an example. In 1987, Walt Disney began an advertising campaign in which the team who's going to win would shout, "We're going to Disney World." You all remember those advertisements. And but that was a reward. That wasn't their job. Their job was what? To make touchdowns. Their job was to win the game. Their job wasn't to go to Disney World. Their job was to win the game. Disney World was a reward. Our job is not go to heaven. That's just the reward. We have a job before that happens. Let me give another example here. 1 Samuel 17:23. Now, young David is asked by his father to take some sandwiches to his brothers who were camped in the valley of Eloth, facing the Philistines. And in the valley of Eloth, there was a giant. His name was Goliath. And he came out every night and every morning. And he challenged the army of Israel to send forth their champion to fight him. 1 Samuel 17:23, I'm reading from New Century Translation. You'll all have either King James or New International Version probably. But if you read it, you'll see it saying the same thing. 1 Samuel 17:23, Goliath, the Philistine, champion from Gath, came out. He shouted things against Israel as usual, and David heard them. They said, "Look at this man." These are the people of the army telling David now, "Look at this man. He keeps coming out to challenge Israel. The king will give much money to whoever kills him. He will also let whoever kills him marry his daughter, and his family father's family will not have to pay taxes in Israel. So, whoever kills Goliath, they're going to get lots of money. They'll get the king's daughter. The family will not have to pay taxes in Israel. Pretty good incentive, unless the daughter was not very attractive. That might have been a downer, but I suspect it enticed a lot of people, but not enough to go out and face Goliath. They don't want to get killed. So David took the challenge, and he fought Goliath. In Revelation 3, verse 5, it says, he that overcometh shall be clothed in white raiment. Okay? Clothed in white raiment is the reward. The job was what? To overcome. David's job was what? To kill the giant. The reward was the daughter's wife, the king's daughter, much money, no taxes. That was the reward, but the job was to kill Goliath. Revelation 3:12, him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God. A temple and the pillar of my God. That's the reward. What's the job? The job is overcoming. Revelation 3:21, to him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne. Sit with God in his Christ, and his throne is the reward. The job is to overcome. Revelation 21:7, he that overcometh shall inherit all things. Inherit all things, that's the reward. First, you win the game to go to Disney World. First, you overcome the giant. And first, you overcome. All those things would get in our way as we run our race. Now, here's the thought. Maybe Christians should get their mind off the reward and get back to their job. Too many Christians in the world are just talking about going to go to heaven, good, wonderful, we're going to dance with the angels. And they're focusing on the reward. Maybe they should forget about the reward, because that's kind of a selfish thing. Maybe they should concentrate on the job. Do your job. A child is told to clean his room. That's his job. Before he gets what? The dessert. Now, Jan Brewer says, do your job. And Jesus Christ, I believe, is probably standing before his church today, and he says, do your job. You don't have to worry about the reward. The reward is secured through Jesus Christ. Not through God. A lot of people talk about God. Lots of people believe in God. It's not through God. It's through the name of Jesus Christ. So often people talk about they believe in God. They worship God. They even pray to God. But it's Jesus Christ, the name given above all names. The mandate of Christians is to do their job, to transform the world. But we have forgotten our dominion mandate, and now instead of the church transforming the world we see it every day, has transformed the church. The modern church has taught people that all you must do is come to Christ, sit back, and wait for glory. It concentrates on making believers. Hocus pocus and poof, you get a fire escape. But the Apostle Paul says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that's in Romans 12, chapter 12, verse 1. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed. Now, what was the purpose of Christ? Christ came what? To deliver the household of Israel. We read that in Luke chapter 1, verse 68 through 72. He came to confirm the promises, what? Made to Abraham. That's our job. Now, when I say that we are to focus on a message to our people, I'm called racist. And you're called racist. But we find where Jesus came to confirm the promises made to Israel. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercy of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice. If we're going to reach out and touch the hearts of our people who are being pressured and formed into a multiracial society that will genocide them, then we have to what? Present our bodies. We have to understand that that's important. That's important. Our people are being genocided. The covenant of God is under attack. And Paul says there to present your bodies and don't dedicate your life to this mission of white Christian revival. What he says. Now, I know there are people who come forward to an altar. They say what we are heard is a sinner's prayer. And they join the church and they attend Bible studies and they're ready to go to heaven. And then there are others who understand that they have a job to help transform the world. The modern church shows people how to become believers and go to heaven. But Jesus Christ made disciples who understood their dominion mandate. And they went forth to conquer the world in the name of Christ. They were indeed Christian soldiers. They were doing their job. They didn't just get back and say, I'm saved now, and, what else to do? Well, you got a job. And the job today we face is more pressured upon us than even before, because our people are facing this destruction to destroy God's people. And we talked about before, which I won't go into now. That's one of the three ways in which Satan can win his rebellion, by genociding the white race. If he can genocide the white race, it'll prove that God was not able or unwilling to keep his covenant. So it's very important. So he says, do your job. How else can you explain their commitment of all those people who sacrificed their lives or were fed to the lions? And the 11th chapter of Hebrews talks about, the faith chapter, gave up their lives so willingly. It wasn't they were just trying to get the reward, but they're trying to get to the finish line. They're trying to do their job. So we have to know where the finish line is. The second thing is you have to know what threatens your success. What can prevent you from winning the race? Who or what is the opposition? In 1 John chapter 2, verse 15 and 16, it says, do not love the world or the things that are in the world. Anyone who loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. What was the love of the Father? What was that love of the Father? Christ told us very clearly. He said the first commandment was to love the Lord thy God, and the second commandment was to love your people. If you don't love your people, you don't have the love of the Father. Do not love the world, and all those things that deflect you away from the service that we are commissioned in doing this job. Do not love the world or things that are in the world. Anyone who loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, all these things in the world that can deflect us from doing our job. It may be name recognition, it may be prestige in community, it may be money or whatever it could be. Anything that would deflect us from doing this job, the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, he says, the pride of life, all those things not of the Father, but is of the world. Anything, we can sit and name stuff. I'm sure we can go through here and people could name different things. This is our job. As Christians, this is our job. Do we do our job or do we do our job? Do we not do it? Do we find some excuses for it? I don't have time for it, I'm busy, blah, 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 all this other stuff. I hurt my standing in the community, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. What is your job? And there's other people running this race too. You're not the only one. Now, I'm not talking about, you're not, we have to understand, our competition isn't each other in this case. Our competition is who's going to get dominion. The others who are running the race are the George Soroses and the Hillary Clintons and the Joe Bidens. They're running the race also. And we're running the race. We're trying to do our job. They're doing their job. We're trying to do our job. They're doing their job. And we're all seeking the same thing, dominion. There's others running the race. They're trying to win. There are others trying to get dominion. There are others who are trying to win the dominion for the satanic rebellion. Some may say, well, we're in a spiritual conflict. And that's true. But we do have some control over the earthly realm also. And that's where we live in. Our competition in this race for dominion are those that seek to destroy God's people. That's our competition. Only one's going to win the prize. Either our side will win the prize, or their side will win the prize. Either our side will have dominion, or their side will have dominion. There are those that hate their race. Seems the whole non-white world is united against God's people. Today, they stand as a giant before us, large corporations and societies and so on. A new Goliath in defiance against God and his holy people. So, in closing here, King Solomon built the temple. King David wanted to build his temple for God, but Solomon was commissioned. He was given the job to build the temple. And the construction of this temple, the Solomon's temple it's called, started 4 years after Solomon became king. It took 7 years to build. Inside the temple, sacrifices were made. As you went through the temple, there were 2 giant pillars. And each of these pillars was given a name. On one side was a giant pillar that was called Yakin, with the name they gave that pillar. On the other side, they named this pillar Boaz. So these 2 pillars, Yakin and Boaz. Now, if you recall, our bodies, now I'm going to refer to those names here in a moment, our bodies are also called the temple of God. And like Solomon's temple, God offers 2 spiritual pillars to help us win the race. We're in this race. And we have 2 pillars that can help us win the race. Now note, David had a job to do what? His job wasn't to get the king's daughter. His job wasn't to get much money. His job wasn't to get so family didn't have to pay taxes. His job was to kill Goliath. That was his job. And if Goliath won in this battle that David is beginning to have with Goliath, if Goliath won, the Philistines would claim dominion. If David wins, Israel would claim dominion. That's a battle we're in. That's a battle we're in. Whether we like it or not, we're in this battle. Who is going to claim dominion? If we are to win this race and claim dominion, we need to be strengthened by the 2 pillars that held up Solomon's temple. One pillar was named Yakin, and Yakin means he will establish. Who's he? It's just some mystical god that you can't put a name to? He. I recall when, I guess I've had a habit over the years to irritate some people. And I recall when I was called before the grand jury investigating what became known as sedition trials. And several funny incidents happened during that, but when I was called to testify, they told me to raise my right hand, and I did. They said, "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?" And I said, "What God are you talking about?" They probably never had anybody ask them that before. I said, what God are you talking about? He said, what do you mean? Well, you're talking about Allah? You're talking about Buddha? You're talking about Jesus Christ? What God are you talking about? I don't know. I shouted at him, but... And they said, well, I don't know. They didn't know what to say. Anyway. So, he was established with the name Yakin. That's what that name means. He will establish. And he is Jesus Christ. If we're going to win this battle, we have to be firmly established in who? Jesus Christ. That's our foundation. It's putting our faith and trust in him and recognizing that he is Lord. He is our rock. He is our king. He is our redeemer. We must establish our life in Christ and then working to claim dominion so that our nation is established in Christ also. So the one pillar, Yakin, he will establish. This must be the pillar in our life also. We must be established in Jesus Christ. The other pillar is Solomon's temple was named Boaz. Boaz means in him is strength. If anybody needs strength in this battle, it's us. We need strength. And Jesus Christ is that strength. Those who seek to establish their lives in just a mystical God or don't put their trust in Jesus Christ, they're not going to have any strength. That's the way I see it. They're not going to have any strength. They're not going to be able to claim this dominion. And perhaps they don't even believe they can accomplish dominion. Perhaps all will remain fearful and afraid. They'll think that they will receive the reward simply because they know the truth. I've known many people throughout the years who think the reward they're going to get, everlasting glory, or however you want to look at it, is simply based on the fact that, well, I know my identity. So, big deal. Well, I know who the enemy is. They think they're going to get this reward because they observe the proper rituals that their church mandates. Maybe on feast days, or they have the right Sabbath, or whatever the case may be. They think their reward could become some head knowledge they have. It has nothing to do with that. They get the reward for what? For doing their job. That's what they get the reward for. Like every other person throughout history, you do your job to get the reward. Whether it be a paycheck or go to Disneyland or the king's daughter. You don't get the reward until you do your job. Christ is telling us today, if you want this reward, if you want this everlasting reward, do your job. People may be afraid of their friends and neighbors and family, may not agree with what they're saying, think may be offending them. Or perhaps they're afraid that somebody will find out what they secretly believe. I've met people like that. They claim to have all these beliefs, but don't let anybody know. Keep it quiet. So in closing, if we want to win this race, we have to be established in Christ, and we have to put on his strength. We have to be more than believers. We have to be his disciples. If we do not put on strength, which Paul called the whole armor of God, then we're not going to be overcomers. We will not stand in an evil day. And if we're not overcomers, and if we don't stand in the evil day, and if we're defeated, it'll be for only one reason, because we did not do our job. Let's have a word of prayer. Our Father, we pray that give us, each of us, the strength to do our job. Help us be faithful. Help us be strong. We don't know what kind of pressure is going to come on each of our lives. We don't know who's going to point their fingers at us. We don't know what people are going to say about us. We don't know what kind of people are going to confront us. And Father, in each of these cases, may we stay strong and do our job and remain faithful so we can hear one day, well done, thou good and faithful servant.
Through his loving arms around me, drew me back into his way. Yes, I'll sing the wondrous story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints in glory, gathered by the crystal sea. I was bruised, but Jesus healed me. Faint was I from many a fall. Sight was gone and fears possessed me, but he freed me from them all. Yes, I'll sing the wondrous story of the Christ that died for me. Sing it with the saints in glory, and the crystal sea. Days of darkness still come o'er me, sorrows past I often tread, but the Savior still is with me, by his hand I'm safely led. I will sing the wondrous story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints in glory, gathered by the crystal sea. He will keep me till the river rolls its waters at my feet. Then he'll bear me safely over where the loved ones I shall meet. I will sing the wondrous story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints in glory, gathered by the crystal sea.